Окончательное наказание Чикатило на основании статьи 40 Уголовного кодекса Российской Федерации назначить...
July 27, 1992, Vitsevsky Park, Moscow. 18-year-old Alexander Pichushkin and his best friend Mikhail Odachuk wander past the endless chess tables, venturing into the seemingly endless woods in search of the grave of Pichushkin's dog. The whole time, they talk about someone who truly fascinates them, Andrei Chikatilo, Russia's most notorious serial killer. They discuss what it would be like to kill someone and how they do it. But while Mikhail is amused by the hypothetical, Pichushkin wants to do it for real. Mikhail strongly rejects the idea, hoping to talk sense into Pichushkin and convince him not to throw his life away for this. But Pichushkin takes the rejection personally. Before Mikhail can get another word out, Pichushkin pulls out a hammer and hits him in the head 21 times, shattering his skull and killing him instantly. Even when Mikhail is on the floor, motionless, Pichushkin does not stop until he's satisfied. Pichushkin drags the body to a nearby sewer well, removing the metal cover and dumping Mikhail's corpse inside. The intense water pressure of the sewer sweeps him away immediately, destroying any left-behind evidence. Mikhail is no longer a concern. As days go by with no sign of him, Mikhail's parents report him missing. But the recent collapse of the Soviet Union leaves Russian police in a complicated, disorganized state. No clear rules for operation. Officers take bribes, avoid complicated cases, and only make the bare minimum effort with the cases they do investigate. For officers, they see the Mikhail case as an easy open and shut case, one with no leads and no evidence, a waste of time. The only person interviewed is Andrei Pichushkin himself. The police visit his home, questioning him about his final hours with Mikhail. But Pichushkin plays his role perfectly, feigning distress and grief about the news that his friend is missing and likely dead. Officers are so convinced that they offer their condolences and abruptly end the investigation, a convenient way out for them and an even better ending for Pichushkin, who realizes he just got away with murder. Over the next 9 years, Pichushkin lives an ordinary, reclusive, and uninteresting life. He stocks shelves at a supermarket by day, where he's a popular and liked member of the team. In R2 room, Pichushkin spends all of his time studying the killings of Andrei Chikatilo, creating a book of news clippings. Grabbing a chessboard in his room, he marks a square with the number 1, May 17, 2001. Pichushkin returns to the park after dark, meeting Yevgeny Pronin, a 50-something man, for a game of chess and a few bottles of vodka. After finding they have multiple things in common, Pichushkin invites Pronin to join him at his dog's grave to honor the anniversary of his death. They venture into the depths of the woods, Pichushkin returning to the scene of Mikhail's murder, finally reaching the grave and raising their vodkas in a toast to the dog. But while Pronin enjoys the moment of silence, Pichushkin suddenly smashes the bottle against his head, knocking him down. Before Pronin can even respond, Pichushkin wedges the glass deep into his skull, killing him instantly. Having secured another victim, he drags and dumps the corpse into the open sewage pipe once again and leaves the scene, allowing the water to flush the evidence far from the crime scene. Returning to his bedroom, Pichushkin grabs the chessboard and adds a 2 to another tile. This is where his sinister game truly begins. Pichushkin wants to become Russia's most prolific serial killer. He wants to beat Chikatilo's record. He wants a 64-body streak. Within a single month, Pichushkin kills 6 more, discovering that he gets more joy from killing those he knows than strangers. He assembles a list of potential victims, mostly men who play chess in the park or who knew his late grandfather, the only family member who ever truly believed in Pichushkin. All of his proposed victims are solitary figures with little or no family connections, an easy route to escape capture. But the police aren't investigating the murders at all. The isolation of the victims leaves them no clues, making it easier than ever for the corrupt officers to dismiss them. It's a brutal blow to Pichushkin, who realizes that if he wants to be as notorious as Chikatilo, he needs to be at least known by the police. On a cold winter's night, Pichushkin walks into a local police station and boldly tells the officer that he regularly murders people. And he does it purely because he wants to. But the officers are confused by the confession. Smelling vodka on his breath, the officers encourage him to go home, convinced he's not being serious. Pichushkin leaves feeling humiliated and rejected, but realizing that he has an opportunity to escalate without suspicion. Chapter 2, Beginning of the End. At a metro station, Pichushkin sees Maria Viracheva, the pregnant ex-girlfriend of one of his friends, alone and crying. She confides in him, admitting that she's struggling financially. Pichushkin comforts her, explaining that he buried some black market cameras in Bitsevsky Park. If she helps him find and move them, she can keep the profit. Despite not knowing Pichushkin well, she agrees, grateful for his kindness. Deep in the woods, Pichushkin brings her to the site of his previous murders, removing the manhole cover to the sewer well. He claims that the cameras are inside. Maria looks inside, trying to understand what she's looking for. Behind her, Pichushkin takes his opportunity, violently shoving her inside. But she grabs onto the side of the manhole, clinging on for dear life. Without his hammer, Pichushkin thinks on his feet. He grabs a handful of her hair, violently smashing her head against the stone walls until she lets go, plunging 26 feet into the violent, icy water below. He returns the manhole cover to its place and leaves the scene, heading home to update his chessboard. But deep in the darkness beneath the manhole cover, Pichushkin has made a fatal mistake. Maria isn't dead. She managed to survive against all odds. As the violent stream of water pulls her through the pitch-black darkness, she manages to grab onto a metal grate, pulling herself up and out of the water. But she still can't see a thing, desperately feeling her way to an exit. But the concrete manhole cover is too heavy to push open. All she can do is scream for help. 20 hours later, someone hears her and is finally able to rescue her. Maria and her baby miraculously survive and make it to the hospital, demanding to file a police report. From her hospital bed, she gives the visiting officer all of the information about her attacker, but quickly realizes that the officer has no intentions to follow up. Despite her insistence that this man tried to kill her, the officer simply reminds her that he didn't succeed and that Maria is from St. Petersburg and lacks the correct papers required to live and work in Moscow. The officer uses this as a credible but equally weak reason to dismiss her statement. Pichushkin is not a priority for them. As the years pass, Pichushkin continues to target isolated nobodies, building his body count and disposing of the corpses in the sewers before anyone even realizes they're gone. With no help from the authorities, the victims' friends and families try and find the connections, discovering some unique patterns. All of the victims were isolated in life, almost all men, and 10 lived in the same overcrowded apartment building, the same building that Pichushkin himself lives in. But nobody suspects him. To the locals, Pichushkin is unassuming, usually drunk, a mama's boy who stocks shelves. That dismissal seriously bothers him. He needs to escalate this. Chapter 3. Manhunt. Pichushkin starts leaving his corpses out in a busy section of the park, making them impossible for anyone to miss. And just to be sure nobody mistakes his work for anyone else's, all of the victims have the exact same traits. The neck of a broken vodka bottle penetrating their skull. Clear wounds from an object with an angled edge, like a hammer. No fingerprints, no footprints. There's nothing for the officers to work from, but it's clearly the work of the same killer. As officers patrol the area every single day, questioning everybody who passes through, they start arresting any and all suspects who seem even slightly suspicious. Punks, foreigners, people with tattoos, anything that authorities consider to be the markings of a suspicious person, but all of them are quickly determined to be innocent. The officers just have nothing to go on. With the cops distracted by their wild goose chase, Pichushkin kills almost every day, making a routine out of it. By day, he stocks shelves, but as soon as work is over, he kills another victim, then returns home for a meal cooked by his mother. Like clockwork. However, Pichushkin is getting sloppy in his killings. Victims who manage to survive the attacks tell the police everything, but the scent of alcohol on their breath, the vodka given to them by Pichushkin, makes them unreliable witnesses to police. Still, the crimes are so consistent and public that newspapers declare the killer the Bitsevsky Park maniac. Police are humiliated by the coverage, continually highlighting their ineptitude. They reluctantly reach out to the witnesses they dismissed, like Maria, to put together a profile of the attacker. Male, tall, lean, and physically strong, with a mental defect of some kind, around 30 years old. Police stop everyone even slightly fitting the profile in Bitsevsky Park, including Alexander Pichushkin himself. He calmly answers their questions, providing them with his ID and giving them all of the information they want, and yet, they still allow him to walk away. He's thrilled when they dismiss him as a suspect, believing he's gotten away with this again. Nobody, not even his own family, thinks it's him. He just has to keep it up. June 16, 2005, 13-year-old Sergei Moskalyova arrives home to find his mom, Marina, isn't there, despite her shift at the supermarket ending hours earlier. A note on the table tells Sergei that she's gone to Bitsevsky Park for a picnic with a friend from work, Alexander. She also left his phone number on the note. Hours go by, but Marina doesn't come home. Something Sergei knows is unusual. He flips through the TV channels when he sees a news report covering the discovery of a murdered woman's body in Bitsevsky Park. But investigators don't believe this has anything to do with the maniac, who up to this point has only targeted men. Still, Sergei has a bad feeling. He calls the number on the note, speaking directly with Pichushkin, but the voice on the other end claims he hasn't seen Marina in around 2 months. A lie. Sergei has heard his mom talk about Pichushkin, her coworker, a lot. After Pichushkin abruptly hangs up, Sergei watches the news with unease. He just knows. Police inspecting the body discover that the victim has a metro ticket in her pocket, a crucial clue that leads them to track her movements on security footage. Sure enough, they see her leaving the station near the park with a tall man who perfectly fits the profile of the killer. When Sergei sees the footage, he immediately confirms that it is his mother. He passes along the note she left for him, telling them about his phone call with the killer and the fact that they're co-workers. That's when the officers begin to realize that both Marina and another recent female victim worked at the same supermarket with Pichushkin. The killer had been right in front of them. Just hours later, a team of officers quietly descend on Pichushkin Street. Coordinating their attack, they flood the hallways, kicking down his apartment door and startling his clueless mother. As they rush into the apartment, they storm his bedroom. Pichushkin, in bed, wakes to find himself surrounded by soldiers with their guns pointing at him, and he is not surprised that he's been caught. Investigators looking through Pichushkin's room discover his chessboard, marked with numbers on all but 2 tiles, as well as a hammer, a book of newspaper clippings relating to Chikatilo, and some extreme violent pornography. Chapter 4. Checkmate police interrogate Pichushkin, but he denies any involvement with the murders. However, he cannot help himself. The attention coming his way is too much to resist. Realizing that the police consider him a credible threat to the community, Pichushkin tells them he did kill the 2 women. But he also reveals he's responsible for the other unsolved murders. He is the Bitsevsky maniac, a reveal the officers never even considered. When the chessboard is presented to him, Pichushkin immediately walks the officers through his list of victims, explaining that every square is equal to 1 kill, but he's furious at the police for failing to find and announce his victims. To him, they were in a twisted partnership, a chess game reliant on him committing the crimes and them keeping score like he did on his board. Desperate to show off his sinister skills, Pichushkin offers to show them where his victims are. In Bitsevsky Park, officers film Pichushkin as he walks them through his many murders. He remembers in vivid detail every moment of his killings, where Mikhail was bludgeoned to death, where Pronin was stabbed in the skull with a bottle, where Maria was pushed into the sewer. He reenacts every murder on a mannequin, giving police over 40 hours of incriminating footage. But when officers throw the dummy into the sewer, just as Pichushkin had done so many times with the real victims, they see just how miraculous Maria's survival was. Psychologists interview Pichushkin to determine his motives, but their conclusion turns out to be unexpected. Pichushkin's frontal cortex was likely damaged by an incident in which a swing hit him in the forehead as a young child, causing him to struggle with impulse control. But because his victims were primarily older men, The aggression was likely rooted in the loss of his grandfather, the only person in the world who believed in him. Without that support, he felt abandoned and alone, angry at the world. Unsure if Pichushkin can be trusted, police turned to forensic evidence, discovering that one of his victims has bits of yellow plastic in his head wounds, likely left over from the hammer Pichushkin used to kill Mikhail and others. When they test the plastic against the handle of the hammer found in Alexander's apartment, they discover that the hammer has deep scratches at a point close to the hammerhead where some plastic flakes have come off. Sure enough, the plastics match. This is the murder weapon. September 13, 2007. As his trial begins, Pichushkin is held inside a glass cage, pacing up and down the whole time. But when it comes time to discuss his involvement, Pichushkin happily admits to the murder, detailing the whole gruesome story with no emotion, regret, or remorse. In fact, he would do all of this again if he could. His testimony is enough. It takes the jury less than 3 hours to find him guilty on all charges. But while he's convicted of 49 confirmed murders and 3 attempted, Pichushkin still appeals to the judge. But he doesn't want leniency or to deny the charges. No, he wants the court to add 11 additional victims to the body count, which would take his total death toll up to 60. That, coupled with the 3 attempted murders, would leave him at a total tally of 63, just one short of a complete chessboard and a more bearable failure for his ego. But the court refuses to fulfill his request, ensuring that Pichushkin will forever be known for only 49 murders, 3 less than Chikatilo was ultimately convicted of. The first 15 years of Pichushkin's life sentence are to be served in solitary confinement, the harshest sentence he could receive in Russia, a country without the death penalty. He's sent to a hard labor colony in Siberia, isolated and far from civilization.